I'm your mystery reader, and I'm going to be reading a story for you called Let It Begin Here, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the first battle of the American Revolution. We're starting here on April 18th, 1775, 9:30 p.m., Paul Revere, a Boston silversmith and messenger for the Patriots, receives an urgent request to visit Dr. Joseph Warren's home. Upon Paul's arrival, Dr. Warren assigns him a double mission. He must warn Sam Adams and John Hancock in Lexington, and then the Patriots in Concord, that the British are coming. How does Dr. Warren know the British plan to invade Lexington and Concord? General Gage's American wife may have told him. Margaret Kimball Gage, who is from New Jersey, opposes any action that might hurt her native country and may have betrayed her husband's scheme. April 18th, 1775 at 10 o'clock p.m. Before leaving Boston, Revere stops by a friend's house and tells him 2 lanterns. The friend hangs 2 lanterns in the steeple of the Old North Church, signaling the Patriots in the area that the British are leaving Boston by boat before marching inland. Were the British leaving by land, Paul would have ordered 1 lantern placed in the steeple. Paul sets out on his journey from Boston to Lexington. The nearly full moon lights the way as the 2 friends row Paul across the Charles River to Charlestown. The 40-year-old silversmith knows a fast horse named Brown Beauty and begins the 13-mile ride to Lexington. Near Cambridge, 2 British officers suddenly bolt out from behind a huge tree and try to capture Paul. Brown Beauty is too fast for them, though, and Paul is a skilled rider. He guides the powerful mare onto another road. The 2 officers chase him, but they are soon left far behind. At 12 o'clock a.m., Paul reaches Lexington and bangs on the door of a house where Hancock and Adams are staying. Guards outside the house tell Paul to stop making so much noise. "Noise," yells Paul. You'll have all the noise enough before too long. The regulars are coming out. Regulars, redcoats, and lobsterbacks are what the Americans called the British troops. Adams and Hancock are now awake. "Let him in," Hancock tells the guards. Thanks to Revere's warning, Adams and Hancock flee by carriage. Meanwhile, a bell is rung to call Lexington's militiamen to arms. At 1 o'clock in the morning, having completed half his mission, Paul heads for Concord. Along the way, he meets Dr. Samuel Prescott, who is riding a horse home after visiting his fiancée. Prescott offers to help spread the alarm to Concord. This proves to be a stroke of luck. Paul Revere never gets to Concord, for the British troops block his way. But Prescott jumps his horse over a stone wall to elude the redcoats. The young doctor rides through the woods and swampland and enters Concord at 2 o'clock in the morning. Following Prescott's warning, Concord's alarm is sounded. As the bell tolls, townspeople hide military supplies in barns and farms, and Concord's militiamen prepare to fight. April 19th, 1775, about 5 in the morning, the men of the Lexington have been waiting for more than 4 hours for the redcoats. Finally, near sunrise, a lookout gallops into Lexington shouting, "The lobsterbacks are down the road!" Within minutes, about 70 Lexington militiamen gather on the Lexington Green, summoned by the town drummer. Instead of uniforms, the men in the field wear farm clothes. Instead of weapons, they carry old hunting muskets. Some are teenagers, like the 19-year-old drummer William Diamond. Others, such as 62-year-old Robert Monroe, are rather old to fight. There are several pairs of fathers and sons. One soldier, Prince Easterbrook, is a slave who has been promised his freedom if he helps fight the British. The men are awaiting the British have one thing in common. They are scared, for they are about to face an army from the world's strongest nation. "Stand your ground," the leader of the Lexington militia says, Captain John Parker. "Don't fire unless fired upon. But they mean to have a war. Let it begin here." And at about 5:20 in the morning, an advance party led by Major John Picarian, the officer who boasted that the Americans would run away, approaches Lexington Green. "Disperse, you rebels, disperse in the name of the king," Pitcairn yells at the Americans. "Lay down your arms." Facing the guns of several hundred redcoats, Captain Parker decides to back down. He tells his men to go home but remain armed. Most of the men start walking away. A few don't. Captain Parker's cousin, Jonas Parker, a grandfather who has vowed to never flee from the British, stands his ground. So does the 62-year-old Robert Monroe. Suddenly, a shot rings out. From which side is unknown. Moments later, the redcoats let loose a torrent of gunfire. Robert Monroe is shot to death where he stands. Jonas Parker is wounded, but true to his vow, fires his musket from the ground until killed by a bayonet thrust. Jonathan Harrington, walking home, is shot near his doorstep. He crawls a few yards, but dies in front of his horrified wife and son. The Battle of Lexington lasts just 10 minutes. In all, 8 Americans die and 10 are wounded in this battle of the Revolutionary War. Several Americans have returned enemy fire, wounding Major Pitcairn in the finger and another British soldier in the leg. Following the battle, the entire British force meets up and heads to Concord 5 miles west. They expect that most of the Americans will run away there too. But at 7 o'clock a.m., 90 minutes after the Lexington battle, Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith leads his full force of 700 redcoats into Concord. There, several hundred troops commanded by the 65-year-old James Barrett are as terrified as the Lexington men have been. 1, 2, then 3 hours pass. The Americans only stand and watch the sea of redcoats taking over their town, seizing weapons and gunpowder. At 10 o'clock in the morning, a cloud of smoke from fires the British have set rises over Concord. The smoke above their town stirs the Americans' hearts. "Will you let them burn the town down?" one man asked Colonel Barrett. Colonel Barrett orders his troops to advance towards 100 redcoats guarding Concord's North Bridge. The Americans are about 200 feet away when the British fire at them. 2 Americans are killed and several are wounded, but this time the Americans don't run. "Fire, fellow soldiers, for God's sake, fire!" shouts an American officer. "Fire, fire, fire, fire!" the Americans along the bridge yell. The Americans open fire, killing or wounded about 15 redcoats. Astonished that the colonists have fought back, and seeing more Americans pouring into Concord, the whole British force begins retreating toward Boston. But the Americans aren't finished. They pursue the redcoats, shooting at them from behind trees and stone walls. News of the American defeat at Lexington is spread, and militia units pour in from far and wide seeking revenge. "It seems as if men came down from the clouds," a British survivor later writes. About 3,600 patriots from 40 towns joined the fight, turning the road into a 20-mile-long battlefield. Near Lexington, a group of Americans with a special score to settle, Captain John Parker and his remaining men lie in wait. One of them takes aim at the British leader, Lieutenant Colonel Smith, and wounds him. Some of the fiercest fighting occurs at the town of Menotomy. There, a group of redcoats rushes 78-year-old Samuel Whittemore as he fires from behind a stone wall. Whittemore brings down 3 redcoats before the British shoot him and stab him with bayonets. But amazingly, he survives and lives to the age of 96. At 7 o'clock p.m., the British finally limp home into Boston. They've suffered a devastating defeat. Nearly 300 redcoats have been killed or wounded. The colonists have suffered about 100 casualties at the running of the Battle of Concord, the first American triumph of the American Revolutionary War. The battles of Lexington and Concord did more than begin the Revolutionary War. They showed England and the rest of the world that Americans would fight for their freedom. The battles were also bloody reminders that achieving independence would cost many lives. Winning the war took 8 years, but finally, on September 3rd, 1783, the United States and Britain signed the Treaty of Paris. Britain recognized the independence of the United States, ending the war that had begun one spring morning at Lexington and Concord. Thanks so much for reading this story with me. I hope that you have a wonderful reading month